Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to Julie's Orchids. For today's episode, we're going to do some growing tips on growing orchids indoors, specifically relating to humidity. And we're going to discuss the challenges that I experience in my Mediterranean climate here in Perth, Western Australia, and things that I do to help mitigate low humidity in my indoor grow spaces, and how I achieve beautiful blooms like the ones you see before you now. So do stick around. All right, guys, welcome back. So on the table before you, you see a couple of pretty happy plants that are in bloom. And orchids are tropical plants. And I do not live in a tropical climate. Matter of fact, I live in a Mediterranean climate, borderlining on temperate. It gets very, very dry here in Perth in the summer times. So if you're one of those lucky growers like Dave's Orchid Oasis that lives in Florida, which is the absolute perfect climate to grow tropical epiphytic orchids without much problem from your environment. So if you're like me and Nina and other growers who grow in less than ideal environmental conditions for these tropical plants, and particularly if you grow indoors, today's episode is for you. Okay, so as I mentioned, if you live in Jamaica or Florida or Louisiana or one of those nice, humid, tropical or subtropical places, this video might not be for you, particularly in regards to humidity, because if you live in those places, Florida, Jamaica, you have no problem with humidity. Your conditions are exactly what the orchids need in nature. If you live in Perth, Western Australia, or southern Spain, or way up, there's a lady in Finland growing orchids, so she's got similar problems. She has to grow indoors. So today we're going to talk about humidity levels, maintaining humidity levels indoors, and things you can do to help your tropical houseplants get the humidity levels they need to bloom and create such beautiful flowers as you see before you. So first thing I want to talk about humidity is getting to know your growing environment. Get to know your grow space. You can buy humidity meters, and they're not that expensive. You can pick them up fairly cheaply on eBay. I'm sure you can get them on Temu. I've got a couple here or there throughout the house, and I monitor the humidity levels through the house. Now, I've been growing orchids indoors for several years now, and I've got a pretty good nail down on what my humidity levels do throughout the year. And I've been monitoring them. And so I know that in the summertime here in Perth, it's very hot, it's very dry, without augmenting my humidity in the summer inside of the house with the air conditioning running, because it gets to 40, 42 C, that's 110, 112 Fahrenheit. So you do run the air conditioner dries things out. So before I was running and monitoring my humidity levels, or when I first started monitoring my humidity levels, without augmenting anything in the summer times, the humidity levels inside of my house was 12% relative humidity. And that is not healthy for humans, let alone orchids. And that kind of shocked me, because having moved to Perth from East Central Illinois, in the summertime there it's pretty humid, and of course it's very cold in wintertime. So here it's very hot and dry with very intense burning sun, very easy to get sunburn, very easy for your plants to be burned here in the summertime in Perth, and very low humidity levels. So I had to learn over the last 4 years or so how to best increase my humidity levels within the house to get my plants to grow more healthily and more happily. And through the process of monitoring my humidity and making adjustments and things, I was able to get the humidity levels in my house all year long to run whole house at about 55% during the hottest part of summer and the driest part of summer. 50 to 55% I can get through the whole house. And I'm going to discuss with you how I do that, because I would not be able to grow orchids in the living room and if I was not able to get my humidity levels in the house up higher than 12% relative humidity without augmentation. So we'll talk first about equipment. And some of the equipment you're going to need will be an investment. Obviously, a humidifier is an investment. Those can run quite expensive depending on what you get, and you'll need to monitor your humidity levels, figure out what works best for you. I'm going to go over what I do in my climate here in Perth, Western Australia, that helps me successfully grow these tropical orchids and get them to bloom. And I've even been able to bring home 3 different state championships. So getting your humidity levels right is tricky, but it can be done. And it doesn't have to absolutely 100% break the bank. But a good humidifier, I'm going to say this, as with any equipment, you get what you pay for. And if you spend a little bit more money on a good humidifier, you'll appreciate it in the long run. Okay, so we're going to wander over here to where I have mostly my Phalaenopsis style Phalaenopsis growing. I do have a single polychilous Phalaenopsis growing here, and this is species Phalaenopsis hieroglyphia. And hieroglyphica has got 2 flower spikes going, and each has got 2 buds. So really happy to see that one. But I just want to buzz over here and just let you see all these phals, all their aerial roots, and how happy these plants are growing in a environment which right now I'm getting 63% humidity in the lounge room. Now, it is fall here in Perth, so we are getting the change of humidity as we go from hot, dry summers to wet, cool winters. Now in Perth, in the wintertime, I find that I don't have to fill up my humidifier nearly as often as I do in the summertime. And I can keep about 63% humidity with only having to fill the humidifier up once, maybe twice a week, whereas in the summertime, I have to fill the humidifier up daily. Now, in this portion of the living room is where I have my Paphiopedilums. And the paths, again, they're happy at the 50 to 65% humidity that I'm able to get year-round through the house. Now, in the summertime, it's 50 to 55%. And in the winter, it can get up to 65% with very little work coming off of my humidifier. Got, I think that is Phal spicerianum in bud. Down here we've got Paph idiatiae in bud again. And first time for me is the Paph that I got from Lynn Brooks at Lynn Brooks Orchids. It's that one right there, and it's putting out its first flower spike. Now this one did get attacked by the pests, whatever I had going on, but it's pulling through. Okay, so as we're walking down the hall from the paths to the frags, I did mention that you might have to buy some kit. And this is one that I highly suggest you get. I got these off eBay. There's like a 2-pack for I think 20 bucks. I got a couple of them, and I monitor the humidity levels, a couple different places through the house. So here, right outside of the grow room in the hallway, you can see that we're getting 64% humidity, and there's not a humidifier out here. The frags are very happy. We've got Phragmipedium Pink Panther putting out a bud and another bud there. So those are very happy. And again, our big, huge frags down here, look at how happy those are. Those are some seriously happy looking plants. And again, I'm able to maintain 64% humidity out here for lots of reasons. Firstly, we'll go off with how I have these plants potted up. So I have them planted in this semi-hydro with the drainage holes at the back. And frags like to be moist all the time, which is why I do this. So these pots are actually pretty damp all the time, which helps keep a little bit of a microclimate, adding a bit to the relative humidity on each one of these shelves. So that's part and parcel of the reason why I have a lot of my plants potted up this way. This setup helps with a little microclimate on the shelves as you group your plants together to add just a little bit more to the humidity around. Over here, we've got Phragmipedium Pearcii. And as you can see, this thing has been just putting out bloom after bloom after bloom for a pretty long time. I think these flower spikes, I think that's going to be the last flower on this flower spike. And this one has already made its last flower spike. So these flower spikes for this year are done. This little guy has been going for about 5 months, 6 months straight. Just one flower spike, putting out flower after flower. Then it puts out another flower spike that goes flower after flower. I just love the frags. Now we're going to meander here into the grow room, and we're going to look at, first off, the most expensive piece of kit that you're likely going to have to buy, and that's a humidifier. Now, depending on your needs and what you need, you may not need a whole house humidifier. I opted to do a whole house humidifier. I now leave the grow room door open, so that humidifier there, along with the plants being set up in the semi-hydro and things, I'm able to maintain the humidity levels that I've showed you year round. I got this humidifier off of eBay, and I think it ran me $400. Now, yep, that's a lot of money. But before this, I had a little 6-liter humidifier, and that thing in the summertime was barely keeping up with just this room, wasn't adding anything to the whole of the house, and I would have to fill it twice a day. This one in the hot of the summertime, I have to top it up once a day in the summer, and in the winter, I have to top it up once a week, and it holds 16 liters. Other nice thing about this particular brand or model is that you fill it from the top, so you don't have to have the wonkiness of a heavy canister of water that you then put onto the humidifier base. This one, the top comes off, you fill the water in here, you don't have to lift heavy water, it saves your back. Top tip on the humidifier. I clean it every 2 or 3 months, and by that I mean I let it run dry, and then I take it, the water reservoir part, into the kitchen, and I give it a wash with some dish soap, rinse it off, and then I get it going again. Likewise, there's a little motor in there that I also give a little rinse off, but I don't put in the sudsy water. To avoid limescale buildup, as I know that the water coming out of my main line has a lot of calcium in it. So to avoid limescale buildup on the motor parts of the humidifier, I fill this with my reverse osmosis water. I use my reverse osmosis water for the plants, the humidifier, the coffee machine, anything that's a machine that uses water. that could get limescale buildup that could affect its working properly. So top tip on your humidifier, get to know what your water is like at home. And if you've got a lot of calcium buildup on your shower curtains, don't use your tap water. Get good water that doesn't have high calcium, and your humidifier will last longer. So you can see that this is keeping the humidity in this room right now at 60%. I don't really trust that off the humidifier because the sensor is right here, and I don't like that. So that sensor doesn't tell me what the humidity levels are anywhere else in the grow room. So again, we're going to dig through the grow room and figure out where my humidity monitors are at, and we'll be right back. All right, so as we can see over here, let's move that. On this side of the grow room, there's the sensor. On this side of the grow room, we're getting 62%, whereas that says 59%. This is also getting direct sunlight on it, so I'm unsure. That's why I don't trust this, and I have gone ahead and just monitor it with these ones. Again, you can get them off eBay. I'm sure you can get them at Temu, but they're worth the investment, and it is very much so worth it to take notes, be it mental notes or handwritten notes, as you progress through your seasons, and you have to use maybe your air conditioning or your furnace heating. You'll need to monitor the different areas in your house. So invest in a couple of these, put them a few places throughout your house before you get your orchids, or when you first get your orchids, and really start seeing what they're doing. Again, I put them in this sort of setup with the semi-hydro, the 2 holes, because it does help me create microclimates. And you can see I've got, orchids sort of grouped together. So this grouping of plants together also sort of helps with the microclimate of sort of keeping some humidity on each shelf a little bit more stable. Another thing that we can do, and we'll come over here to the foul shelf. So on my plants that have the holy pots and sit on saucers, so these are just terracotta saucers. These saucers are not sprayed or treated. You can see the water rings on them. So when I water the plants, and whatever residual water dribbles down into the terracotta bottoms, the water absorbs it, the terracotta absorbs it, and this keeps wet for a while, and again helps a little bit with that humidity. And I do that. These are my polychilus, most of my polychilus phalaenopsis, and all of these were seedling babies that either grew from flask or bought as seedlings. Now we're going to come down here to the actual maternity ward. So these are all the babies. These are the species Cattleya jesii that we've unflasked. And again, you can see that I've got, because I've just watered, so throughout the week, this water is just going to slowly evaporate away. And I've got each one of the babies' trays sitting in, about that much. So a half a centimeter of water, and this stays with them all week, and it'll slowly be reabsorbed. Now that we're coming into fall, I'm going to be needing to fill these to a lesser depth because the natural humidity of Perth is going to start coming into play, because fall is when we start getting our rains, because we only get rains in winter. So it gets fairly humid by comparison in winter than it does in the summer here. Now I'm going to go over one last tip and trick that I use for helping my humidity levels in my dry Mediterranean climate here in Perth. Now this trick specifically relates to my mounts. So you can see I've got this old man's beard. Got a lot of old man's beard. And when I'm spraying my mounts, I also spray the old man's beard And you can tell that it absorbs the water because you can see that it turns green. So when I spray and water my mounts, I also spray and water my old man's beard. And this stays pretty wet for a while. And again, this also helps add to the humidity of the area. Now, I do spray my mounts twice a day. So the spray mist also adds to the general humidity. And, you know, I think the old man's beard I got, actually, I think I got it from Helen for free. She just gave me some. You know, once you get some, it self reproduces pretty easily if you keep it happy. And I'm able to grow it indoors in Perth. And people said I couldn't do it, but I've been able to grow it indoors in Perth by spraying it. And again, all of this adds to helping take the workload of that machine right there off a little bit. There you go, guys. We're going to finish off today's talk by looking at this beautiful Brassavola nudosa. Again, this grow season has just put out spike after spike after spike after spike, and I think this is our last spike for the grow season. But boy, it smells nice. It smells nice in here. I've got Brassavola nudosa, Encyclia lancifolia, and Prostechlia cochleata, all in bloom right now. So the house smells so nice. All right, so again, that was sort of a kind of a wandering around of how I deal with humidity levels growing indoors when you live in a less than perfect environment for growing tropical houseplants. Again, if you live in Florida, Jamaica, the Caribbean, Brazil, this probably isn't so much for you unless you grow indoors and you suffer with effects of heating and cooling, which dries the air out. But for everybody else, particularly in the northern hemisphere that has to deal with the drying of the air when heating in the wintertime comes around, some ideas on how you can help with humidity. I went with the whole house humidifier because I found that myself physically felt better. My skin felt less dry and itchy. My hair seemed more healthy when I got the whole house sort of in the healthy, comfortable range. So humans need a certain amount of humidity, and 12% is not in the good zone for human health nor orchid care health. So if you live in a climate like mine, you might find you feel a little bit better if you get a whole house humidifier, and that you could maybe grow some orchids not just crammed in your grow room where it has such tight humidity control. But you can get by with growing, you know, the Phalaenopsis style Phalaenopsis in relatively low 50% humidity. They grow fine. Their orchid roots do fine. But that's me, you know, half the year, very low humidity. But I'm able to get it up with a whole house humidifier, using the terracotta pots, using the pumice that holds humidity a little bit better, using the semi-hydro technique with a little bit of water left at the bottom of the trays, using the pebble trays, I guess is what you would call underneath the babies to keep, you know, humidity there, and grouping plants together. These are all ways that you can help mitigate low humidity levels and invest in a good humidifier. Be that the place where you go ahead and spend that money to get a good quality one. This is where you want to spend that money. Go on to eBay and get the cheapy little humidity monitors like I showed you. Those are relatively inexpensive. Get several of them, put them in different rooms in your house, put them in different areas, levels, heights in your house, and see what your humidity levels are. And then start monitoring it once you get your humidifier. And remember, it's not just only in summer you monitor it, because there'll be seasonal changes as the seasons go through. You might have, you know, fall where you don't have to run any heating or air conditioning, and your humidity levels are great. You don't have to run a humidifier at all. You might live in Florida where you just never have to run a humidifier, and you don't really have to work that hard at getting your humidity levels there because you live in Florida. I live in Perth. I'm about an hour and a half drive away from temperate desert scrub climate. I'm in the middle of a city. I have very little park spaces around me. It's concrete jungle out there. So lots of things make it hot and really add to the hot and the dry. So you really need to monitor your individual houses or grow spaces humidity throughout the year to sort of understand it and kind of get a control on it. Realize that the humidity level is sort of a long end game. You sort of have to monitor it, and then because the seasons are changing, you'll have to monitor it and see how it goes. But you'll get into the swing of things after several years. And as I mentioned, spend a little bit of money and get that quality humidifier and fill it with quality water. I use reverse osmosis water in my humidifier because I don't want the motor to get clogged up by any limescale buildup. So that's another thing to think about. All right, guys, if you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. I thank you so very much for watching. A subscribe would be great, particularly if you found any value to this content and think it might help you grow your orchids more successfully indoors in your climate. And yeah, you guys, thanks again for watching. Do hit the like button, subscribe, give it a share if you found it worth it, and have a fabulous day.